following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
You're listening to Better Live Than Dead.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to another episode of Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 44, the season preview cast. Now, you can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you can listen to a podcast, you can hear this podcast. If not, as always, let us know and we'll make it happen. I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD. Not joined by anybody right now, but we will have a special guest coming up very soon. Before that, we wanted to let you know the preseason is over. The National Football League season starts on Thursday. The Buffalo Bills have their first game less than 7 days away in the Meadowlands against the New York Jets. Now, the 53-man roster is set. LeSean McCoy, no longer a Buffalo Bill, now a Kansas City Chief. And like I mentioned, the Bills have some meaningful football coming up. Now, with that being said, after a quick commercial break, Matt Parrino of New York Upstate makes his Trust the Podcast debut to discuss everything Buffalo Bills with me, as well as week one ahead of us. Stick around for more of Trust the Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Perez. Project Transformation is not just about my weight loss, but it's also about the people who are supporting me in my weight loss and your journeys. And frankly, it's not going to be just about my weight loss journey. Throughout this, I want to highlight people in the community that are making changes and transforming the community themselves. So it's not going to be just my transformation, but it's the community's transformation. And I'm inviting you to walk with me only on the Gear Radio Network.
Hey there, Eric here from IndyCar Media, stopping in to let you know that we are here to help you in your graphic art and design needs. T-shirts, branding, flyers, you name it. Get a hold of us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/IndyCardMedia. That's INDY Card Media. Or give us a call at 337-446-4331.
You're listening to Better Live Than Dead on the Gear Radio Network.
And back here on Trust the Podcast, I am joined now on the IndyCar Media Hotline by the Buffalo Bills beat reporter for New York Upstate, as promised, Matt Parrino on the line. And Matt, how are you doing today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, the Pizza Man podcast. I'm pretty excited about this. I love pizza. I'm a big Buffalo pizza fanatic, and so this is a real honor for me.
I'll tell you what, man. Buffalo pizza, it's really. You think because you're in the area that you're like, oh, I'm just pumping the tires of the area and of the pizza people because the pizza's really good. And then you go somewhere else and you're like, because whenever I go somewhere, I'm always like, okay, I got to try the best pizza place to see how it stacks up. You try it, and then you go, man, I can't wait to go home.
100%. And I was out in Vegas, and luckily they had a place out there that a couple of guys from Buffalo took Buffalo Pizza and Wings out there and made a place. So that was my go-to. But I came to like artisan pizza and kind of like that more Italian style pizza, but there's just nothing like you go to New York City, Chicago. I always need to come back, get myself a Bocce's pie or Leonardi's because that's my go-to.
Absolutely. I can't look. My wife and I have talked about potentially moving sometime in the future as one would do. The one thing I just don't think I could ever leave is the pizza. And I guess that's why I'm the pizza man. I don't know, but you'd have to ask Twitter about that one. But hey, I never pass up the opportunity to eat some pizza, and I never pass up the opportunity to talk about some pizza. So maybe that's my next venture. I'll start a pizza podcast. That'd be fantastic.
I think that you're onto something there, and I would love to come on that and break down some of the best pies in Buffalo. And it's funny, Bocce's, which is my favorite, they send you the pizza, like you can order it anywhere in the country and they'll overnight it to you. And I never took advantage of that in my 5 years. I was always skeptical on the half-baked if it would really deliver the goods like a freshly made pie delivers. So I never tried it out. But yeah, there you go. Pizza pod coming at you.
It's got to be. It's got to happen now. As I was going to say, it reminds me of a place I grew up. I grew up out in Holly, a couple towns over from Batavia here, and in Brockport, there's a guy who owns a garbage plate shop. He owns it's much other things, but it's really a garbage plate spot, and he just ships his garbage plates all over the country. He'll just be like, here's a box with this stuff. You know how to put it together. You've had enough of them, and you're good to go. And I think that's incredible. It's a smart idea.
I'm right there with you, my friend.
Now, before we get too far, I want to mention you can follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Parrino. Last name, it's MattParrino. It's a good follow. We follow each other. We're friends on Twitter. But Matt, there's three things. We always do on the podcast. We go through the heart of the podcast. It's called our three big things. So I've got three different topics, and then wherever it takes us, we can go from there. But first thing I want to talk about, kind of the big news story of the week, despite the fact that it's been really rumored since the signing of Frank Gore, the drafting of Devin Singletary, but the hammer dropped a few days ago. The Buffalo Bills finally say goodbye to LeSean McCoy. And offensively, for me at least, he's one of the best players I've seen come through Buffalo, and he's one of the best offensive players the Bills have had in some time. For those who may not know, he finished his Buffalo career 57 games played, 3,814 rushing yards, 25 touchdowns, the sixth most rushing yards in franchise history. Now, Matt, what does the loss of McCoy mean to the Bills now, and how much confidence does this show in the rookie running back Devin Singletary?
I think, getting a chance you're getting me at a good time, because I just walked out of the Bills locker room after practice today, about an hour ago. And so we got a chance to talk to Devin Singletary and Frank Gore, and I had a nice little conversation with Cole Beasley off to the side as well. And, I think right now there's still a sense of surprise in the room. There's a level of confidence because of, how close the team is and how well they've kind of played at certain periods over the course of the summer. But with Devin Singletary, I think what this move, number one, shows you is that Devin Singletary is the real deal. He's ready. The team is ready to feature him in a pretty prominent role. And I think, Frank Gore is a guy that, they brought in here to be a leader. And I thought when that happened right off the bat, I was very taken aback by that, because LeSean McCoy wore the C on his chest last year. So it just didn't compute for me why you would have a guy in your roster who's going to be 31 years old, was your captain last year, one of your so-called leaders, one of the premier guys on your roster, and you're going out and signing in free agency a 36-year-old running back. Now, granted, a future Hall of Fame running back, to come into the same running back room on the roster. It just never really quite made sense to me. And, Brandon Beane has been up front throughout the summer that this was going to be a competition, that everything that was going to take place once the regular season started was going to be based on what people earn throughout the summer. And I think what happened was Devin Singletary earned more than I think maybe everybody around here was anticipating. And the clincher, the box that was checked for Brandon Beane that really allowed him to, pull the trigger on this move, was Devin Singletary showing that he is capable in the passing game. And it was particularly that pass over the right shoulder, I think it was from Barkley in that second preseason game, that just had you kind of just drop your jaw. And you think back to last season, and I know everybody was talking about how bad this offensive line was, and I respect that, because it was bad. And I think LeSean McCoy's down season, you can attribute a good chunk of that to the fact that he was running behind a bad offensive line, but he was invisible in the passing game as well. And I think that that's one of the areas where I thought, going into 2018, okay, they don't have a great offensive line, but LeSean McCoy, you just got to get him out in space. So get him that ball out in space, let him work a little bit, and that just never materialized. And you're seeing it already in preseason that, Devin Singletary having some success in that regard. TJ Yeldon, who they brought in here to be a third down type back, a depth back that can kind of do a little bit of everything and is known for his ability to pass block, which is important when you have a young quarterback like Josh Allen. So I think all of the moves that were made in the offseason were kind of leading to this decision. And so I think the surprise and the shock of it is just because of his status as, for a long time, one of the premier backs in this league. But as we've gone along here the last couple of days, that surprise has kind of gone away a little bit. And now it's just about getting Devin Singletary ready to kind of carry the load for this team.
Now, looking offensively, you did mention a little bit of what the offense has done. They did this offseason. For me, the one thing I want to point out to you is that I kind of, like you, felt that weird vibe when, they picked up Frank Gore. You're like, okay, how's this going to work out? They get Singletary. You're like, okay, something smells a little funny. But I think for me, once I knew it was going to, I had a feeling that something was going to change was that first preseason game. And I know that they, you don't put a lot of stock into preseason football, but when Frank Gore started and LeSean McCoy sat out and they said, oh, we just want to get a look at what Frank Gore and Singletary can do, it kind of seemed like, hey, the jig is up. We're kind of seeing right through your smoke screen here. So they definitely, it didn't, I guess it could have been more surprising if you weren't kind of led up to it, but the amount of money they owed him, the season the play he had last year, despite the fact that we all know the offensive line wasn't great. And then just kind of how it's played out, it just didn't, something seemed like you said, something seemed like it was up. So I guess it was shocking to finally see it actually. It's like a bad relationship. Like you have two friends who are dating forever and you're like, man, this is a nightmare. This has got to end. And then when it ends, you're like, oh man, that sucks. I'm sorry. But also I kind of expected it to happen. So that's kind of how I feel about it,
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think that overall, this was something that was brewing for a while. I mean, you go back to the beginning of last season and the distraction that was LeSean McCoy's off the field situation with the home invasion and, then some of the stuff over the course of the season with, the kind of nagging injuries. And then, when he got sat down for a game because of apparently breaking a team rule, it was right around the time he kind of had some interesting comments around maybe giving up some carries to an undrafted rookie, Keith Ford. So I just think that the culture that Sean and Brandon have built for this team, I'm not necessarily sure LeSean McCoy fits into that, but I think because he is who he is and has been such a productive player, that type of thing does fit into this culture because they are looking for great football players. I'm not so sure that he is still that. It'll be interesting to watch him in Kansas City. Andy Reid, I guess, is going to figure out how he's going to divvy up carries between some of those guys. I mean, Damian Williams looked pretty good after Kareem Hunt left last year, so it'll be interesting. But he landed in the best situation. I think this gives him a chance to maybe go after a championship, which you mentioned today is something he never was able to do. So I think this, in the end, could be good for everybody because it allows Frank Gore to play that leader role. You have TJ Yeldon for that kind of depth piece. And then you have a young guy that you spent a third-round draft pick on. Listen, if you're spending a third-round draft pick on a running back in today's NFL, that's a guy that you want to utilize immediately and as much as possible in that rookie window, that rookie contract window. So I think it's going to be a lot of Devin Singletary, and he seems ready for it, and the Bills seem ready to give him all that he can handle.
Now, the nice thing about the Buffalo Bills about Brandon Beane is that they clearly recognize that they didn't give Josh Allen the best opportunity to succeed last season. They go into this offseason, they put a lot of focus on improving the offense. John Brown, Cole Beasley, Cody Ford, Quentin Spain, Ty Nsekhe, just to name a few. Do you think, Matt, those moves were enough to help push this offense to the top half of the league, or do you think the offense will still kind of struggle to be successful this season?
My expectation is if this offense and how it's been constructed is able to maintain its health over the course of the season, there's no reason in my mind that they can't be top 15 in this league because you have a young quarterback in Josh Allen who obviously nationally is known for what he was able to do with his legs last year, but there were moments that this guy really wowed us in the press box over the course of a 16-game season with what he was able to do with his arm. And, he's a very raw talent. And I think you needed to put certain pieces around him to develop the just the way that he approaches the game and the way that he thinks when he's on the field. And I think Ken Dorsey is going to be a guy that can harness some of that talent, that arm talent, and figure out a way to utilize it a little bit more practically in the NFL. And you're seeing that already this preseason. And I think Cole Beasley is going to be a big part of that component of his game, a component of that part of his game that helps him execute and maybe get that accuracy rate up a little bit. And I said it like 3 months ago that one of my bold predictions for this year is Josh Allen throwing for around 4,000 yards. And I have nothing has made me go back on that. I think that he's going to be able to, he's got a schedule that isn't very daunting. I think that he can go out there against some defenses that might be ripe for the picking and really start to strategize with Brian Dable, Dorsey, Matt Barkley in the room, and Mitch Morse, a veteran center in this league that helped Patrick Mahomes last year really take that next step, start to strategize, okay, how do I pick defenses apart in that short to intermediate passing game to open things up for the deep ball? And John Brown coming in here, everybody was talking about his deep threat. And listen, he brings that. He's got that speed, but he is a complete receiver that's been in this league now for over 5 years, and he's learned from the best in Larry Fitzgerald in Arizona. He's been around the block. He's studied the game with a number of different minds, and now you see him out there, and I think that his ability to make plays downfield makes him an even bigger weapon in that 12 to 15 yard range, where I think guys are going to be scared of getting beat, and so they get beat shorter. So there's so many possibilities with this offense in terms of the passing offense. I don't think I have enough time in this podcast to really go through each position where I think that they can utilize to take advantage of defenses. And I think, Robert Foster and John Brown on the field at the same time, that's also something that's very intriguing to me. And you're just talking about two big play threats that can go up and just cause headaches for defensive coordinators. So I think that the expectations for this team should be at around 9 or 10 wins. And I think that this passing offense should be significantly better. And if it's not, you have to start asking questions, because they've bolstered this offensive line. They've brought in some reinforcements in the run game, and they've obviously just completely reimagined this wide receiver room. And so I think that if they're not doing those things, that's when the concern starts to set in.
Absolutely. And I was going to actually ask you about Josh Allen, but you kind of touched on it. I know we've seen this preseason with giving him a guy like Cole Beasley that he can kind of dump off to and let Cole Beasley get into open space and do what he needs to do. Things like that will allow him to develop and become a more complete quarterback. But we also have kind of seen Josh Allen revert back to a couple of those warts from last season, where he, again, only preseason, he didn't have a lot of time, but you start to see him, okay, well, instead of, he could dump it off and he decides to run instead, or he decides to run, scramble to the right and chuck it across his body, and he gets an ugly throw off, or things like that kind of worry you. Do you think that Josh Allen is working past that and ready to make the jump into being a better quarterback this season? Or do you think it'll kind of be a very positive season, but a lot of growing pains?
I don't take too much from the preseason stuff that you've seen, good or bad. If anything, I would probably take that Cole Beasley second game against the Panthers into consideration more, but just because he did it in a bigger kind of chunk. That third preseason game, they were running the ball every play almost. 18 out of 24 plays. Josh Allen, to me, is a guy that you need to get him into a rhythm and feeling good early in a game to set him up for some success, and that was a complete opposite in that game. And also, I don't know where I heard it, so I don't want to attribute it to somebody if it was the wrong person, but I was listening to a podcast over the course of the offseason, and the topic of the preseason came up, and they said the person that was talking said that quarterbacks in the league that he's talked to, what they use the preseason and practice for is to attempt throws just to see what happens. And so, yeah, was Josh Allen going to get some flack for that throw in the Detroit game because it's one we've seen 3 or 4 times over the course of the last year? Yes, but that is the kind of situation where you wonder if he's doing that in that setting after really playing it safe and executing really nicely against Carolina, just because he was a little bit frustrated maybe with the approach to the game, running the ball over and over again. I'll wait until the regular season when he does that to kind of, start to ramp up the concern a little bit. But I think that overall what we're seeing, even from the end of last year to this year, is enough progress for me to be, if I was a fan, to be excited for what potentially lies ahead in 2019. And you can't underestimate the jump from last year to this year in terms of just NFL institutional knowledge. You add a guy like Mitch Morse, Cole Beasley, John Brown, even Tyler Kroft, you're adding over a decade's worth of NFL experience that you just throw into those offensive meeting rooms with a second-year quarterback. That stuff's invaluable. It wasn't there last year. The leader in that wide receiver room was Zay Jones as a second-year wide receiver. The leader in that tight end room was basically Jason Kroom. I mean, Charles Clay almost played half the year. So I think that with all of that comes, a better understanding and grasp for the game, and I think that that's going to pay dividends this season for them.
Now, last but not least, we're looking ahead at the Bills defensively, because I feel like this offseason, rightfully so, the offense has gotten a lot of the spotlight because most people expect the defense to be relatively good again. They added Ed Oliver on the front, which will definitely help kind of offplay the loss of Kyle Williams. But with expecting the Bills defense to be one of the best in the league, do you think the Bills have made enough of a leap forward offensively and even defensively with the additions they've made to be a playoff team, or do you expect them to kind of fall close but not enough?
It's a good question. I think that things are setting up nicely in terms of what obviously happened in Indianapolis. I think that overall, top to bottom, they're still a better team than the New York Jets, in my opinion. I think Sam Darnold is further along as a passer, but he also, people don't really mention this when they talk about him as a prospect, most people anyway, is that he has been at times prone to interceptions throughout his college career. And then even last year, I remember the one game where he threw 4 picks. So I don't think I'm definitely sold there yet in terms of a full player, quarterback. So you look at Houston, and obviously they lost Jadeveon Clowney. They brought in Laramie Tunsil, which is obviously a nice addition to that offensive line, and that should be nice for them. But they also lost Lamar Miller. What are they doing in their backfield? So there's a lot of questions throughout the AFC, and I've never, in 20 years of watching Tom Brady, you get to the point where you just have that expectation, and rightfully so, that they're going to be there and they're going to be good and they're going to be one of the elite teams. But eventually Tom Brady is going to fall off a little bit more than usual. And that fall off is going to be dramatic enough to where he's not able to maybe manage things in terms of the lack of talent around him the same way he was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So the loss of Rob Gronkowski, I think, is significant. There's some losses on that offensive line that I think haven't been talked about enough. Trent Williams going over to Oakland, and then them losing their center there. So I think it's a nice situation entering 2019. If this team can stay healthy, I think they should win around 10 games. I think 10 games can get you into the playoffs, and this schedule is not daunting. And the key to it is getting off to a fast start. I think these the first 3 games are all very, very winnable, despite 2 being on the road to start the season. And then all of a sudden, you go into that home game, with a confident Josh Allen, a confident defense, against a New England team that, we'll see where they're at that point. But in Buffalo, I mean, New York Field is going to be rocking in that environment. So from that perspective, I have to think that if you can get off to a very fast start, maybe head into that tougher second portion of your schedule with 6 or 7 wins, you set yourself up for that stretch run. And I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run to the playoffs this year.
And by no means will it not be exciting if you're heading into that tough stretch of games. Because looking at it, we've talked about it on previous podcasts here that if the Bills can get off to a hot start, not only will the fans go nuts, but the players, the confidence in that room will be just unbelievably high, and it's something we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, I know that the year they went to the playoffs and lost to Jacksonville, it was pretty good, but just looking at it, I mean, you think about, okay, they have to play Pittsburgh, they play Dallas later in the season. You look at stuff like that and you think to yourself, okay, yeah, it could be difficult, but if they have that momentum, it may be one of those things where they essentially, I like to use the cliche with the younger teams where it's almost like they're playing because they don't know they're winning games because they don't know any better. And it might be one of those situations where if the Bills can rattle off 4, 5, 6 wins and get real confident early on, they may lose more than they win in the second half. But with that being said, if they set themselves up good early, they won't have to put as much pressure on themselves in the second half. And ultimately, for a young team with a young quarterback, that may be the most ideal scenario for the Bills this season.
Mm-hmm. And I think that if you're a Bills fan and you're counting on the fact that you have a coach in Sean McDermott who has proven in his first 2 seasons to get the most out of the group that he's given to work with. And I think that with the vast improvement on the offensive side of the ball, you figure, one of their the things that they've harped on over the last couple months is they're hoping that this offense takes a significant step forward this year. So if that happens, I think this has a chance to be the best defense Sean McDermott's had yet in Buffalo. He has his star cornerback. He has a star middle linebacker, and he's got some interior pressure finally. As good as Kyle Williams was last year, the consistent pressure up the middle wasn't there all the time. He had spurts and he had moments, and honestly, at his age, he played much better than I think anybody could have expected. But Ed Oliver just brings a kind of a different dynamic. I think you have a starving, hungry backup defensive tackle, Jordan Phillips, who when he gets a chance to get in the game, he is going to be trying to make plays. He's in a contract year, and I think that he's sneaky. He might be sneaky my pick to lead this team in sacks this year. You talk about bold prediction, that might be one, because I think in that 3 technique role, sneakily when they move him over into that 1 technique, he is dynamic and he just blows things up. If he's engaged, if he's motivated, I think they have the pieces. And I think that all that's going on in the interior is only going to help guys like Jerry Hughes and Trent Murphy on the outside who are looking for big years in terms of getting after the quarterback. So it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, finally, after, last year, 2018 was such a down year. I remember that first game took the air out of the balloon. I mean, right away. That Baltimore game was tough to stomach if you're a Bills fan. And this year, I mean, you're hoping to get off to a quick start. There's some manageable games to start to open, and then you go from there.
Yeah, looking at the schedule right now in front of me, I mean, it's hard not to get excited seeing the Bills at the Jets, at the Giants, home against the Bengals, home against the Patriots, in Tennessee by a week, and then they face Miami. Out of all those games, my rule of thumb, Matt, always is to just say, you know what? When I'm trying to predict or if someone asks me what I think the Bills are going to do, I always just presume the Bills are going to lose both games in New England. And if they win one of them, cool, it's a surprise. So, I mean, going into that, looking at all of those games, excluding the New England one, because as I just said, they're all winnable games. So you could potentially be heading into the weekend before Halloween with 1 or 2 losses, looking positive into the second half of the season, where the schedule does get a little tougher as mentioned. But, if this Bills team is ready to make the jump, then it's, it doesn't matter who they're playing. If they're ready to make the jump and they're good enough to make the playoffs, it's precisely what they'll do, I guess.
Definitely. And I think that one thing that, obviously Sean McDermott has talked about over and over again since he's been here is the desire to get a veteran leader in every room. And I think that can't be oversold enough, because when things are tough, when you're in some of these close games and you need somebody to kind of step up in the room and galvanize everybody, he's got those guys everywhere. You look on offense, Mitch Morse on the offensive line, Frank Gore in the running back room, Lee Smith in the tight end room, Cole Beasley and John Brown, kind of 2 different kinds of leaders. And even Zay Jones into his 3rd year, because he's been thrown to the wolves early on, he's a guy that's gone through a lot and likes to think of himself as a leader. And I think at the heart of it all, you have Josh Allen, who, even when things have not been going well for him early on in this first year, the leadership ability that he's shown from the beginning and the way that that's even grown leaps and bounds into year 2, I think has to give you confidence and at least know that, the plan that Brandon and Sean put into place and the way that they've gone out and executed that plan has given you a roster of players that can make an impact and have a chance to lead a playoff run. I know the playoff run 2 years ago was special and it broke the drought and everything like that, but this feels a lot different because this team feels like if things are figured out, they can be a really good team. Not a team that just relies on the defense or, is just kind of scraping. I mean, that game against Jacksonville was pretty ugly. It was, tough to watch at times. It's been constructed differently now. So it'll be fun to watch how it plays out. And I think that there should be excitement and expectation now in year 3.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you joining us today on Trust the Podcast. Again, you can follow Matt at Matt Parrino on Twitter. We'll have to get you back on the podcast sometime during the season, and we'll have to get together sometime and go get some delicious buffalo pizza.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. And anytime you want to talk, let me know.
And before we wrap up this podcast, we want to look ahead. As always, brought to you by 26 Shirts. You can check them out, 26shirts.com, at 26 Shirts on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.com/26 Shirts. And before I announce the special guest we have here for our look ahead, I do want to point out Volume 6, Shirt 22, entitled Go Deep, available through September 8th. That's a great shirt. It benefits the Parkinson's Foundation of the Western New York chapter of the Parkinson's Foundation in honor of Frank Buffamonte. I believe I'm saying that correctly. And then the one that I absolutely love, which hopefully you have gotten your hands on because it's only available online through September 2nd, is the special edition. Undefeated is the title. It's the Preseason Champions 2019 shirt, also honoring the Parkinson's Foundation, as is the other shirt. With that being said, I welcome to the podcast Bills Mafia's favorite Jets fan, Mr. John Cimino. How you doing, John?
Oh, hello, Ryan. Hello, Mafia. I look forward to a wonderful game of ball busting and the NFL season happening week 1 this coming Sunday. Ryan, get pumped. I'm ready, man.
I'm jazzed, man. I'm positively jazzed, as you can tell by this podcast, by the Better Live Than Dead podcast. We're talking everything football this week, especially with the return of the National Football League season on Sunday. The Buffalo Bills are in the Meadowlands to take on the New York Jets. John, we're turning the page to a new season. We've got Sam Darnold versus Josh Allen. We've got a new Bills offense.
They're besties, right?
They are. I've seen the videos. I've seen the pictures from the offseason. They seem to be quite the pair.
They are besties.
What are you looking forward to on Sunday here with the Bills?
Honestly, I mean, aside from the fact that, football is underway and getting to see the two teams, and I don't care, those of you listening to this podcast, I don't give a damn what you say. I can be supportive of two teams in the same division, just, whatever. I don't care what y'all say. Just to see the two teams that I follow heavily, one, because I've followed them my entire life, and the other one because I co-host the podcast with you on occasion here. Just to see those two teams take the field and see what week one helps. I don't know why I'm having a brain fart here, but basically where what the start of the storybook that is each individual season will be. And week 1, what New York Jets team are we going to see? Are we going to see the much improved New York Jets with Le'Veon Bell finally able to, taking snaps and, playing in actual live action? The Bills upgrading the offensive line and things of that sort, and their not so sexy but upgraded wide receiver core that they added. How are they going to function? Is it going to be a vanilla game where the two of them are feeling each other out for the majority of the game, just trying to get the win and saving the best for maybe week 2, week 3 as they go on? It's just going to be a very good vibe, and I'm looking forward to actually seeing action on the in the regular season that actually matters.
Absolutely. And looking at it, I mean, you mentioned it. Seeing Le'Veon Bell for the first time, I believe, in 20 months. You're seeing the new look Bills offense with, I mean, they didn't go out and get Antonio Brown like we've talked about before. There were rumors that was going to happen. Obviously, we've talked about that in previous podcasts, but they go out and get Cole Beasley, get John Brown. They've got another year of Robert Foster, another year of Zay Jones. It's akin to putting, you put rims, on your older car. It's not great, but it looks nice. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's how it'll be. It'll look nice. It'll run nice, whatever it may be. Looking forward to seeing the Bills offense. I expect the Bills defense, as we talked about in the podcast earlier with Matt Parrino of New York Upstate. I expect the defense to be the Bills defense of old. Very good, very talented, very deep, very hard to play against. And more or less, like I said, looking forward to seeing Josh Allen in a meaningful game with this offense, with Devin Singletary in the backfield, Frank Gore in the backfield, no more LeSean McCoy again, as we discussed earlier, and just kind of seeing where it goes from here, feel it out, like you said, John, maybe more of a vanilla game, just kind of teams feel each other out for the first half or so, and then really get into it and see who takes the reins and see how both teams look, because again, it's the start of a very long season. It's September. The season goes till February, so we've got a lot of football ahead of us, but we'll see where it goes, and it's always very exciting when week 1 rolls up.
It is very exciting, and again, the Le'Veon Bell situation, that's what's really, I think, going to be the biggest storyline of this week, in terms of this game with these respective teams. How Le'Veon Bell is, quite frankly, having missed so much time between Pittsburgh and here, having not played in the preseason. All the things about his, possible ballooning up in weight during the offseason and then coming to camp. And, that turns out that the weight gain was fake news, but not playing a single down in the preseason at all, but having sharp practices. This is put up or shut up for Le'Veon Bell. And in a sense, this is also put up and shut up for the New York Jets because, prior to Adam Gase and Joe Douglas's arrival, the Le'Veon Bell signing was a Mike McCagnon thing. So this isn't necessarily, the onus isn't necessarily on Gase and Douglas, but Le'Veon Bell has to perform because Adam Gase doesn't really care. He's one of those type of personalities that don't really care about, who you are or whatever. Ask Jay Ajayi when they were in Miami together. He shipped him off to Philadelphia because he was late or something like that. I can't remember the story. But if Le'Veon Bell doesn't show up to play and it turns out he's not worth the money that they're paying him, Gase is going to try and trade him or Gase is going to cut him in the offseason. And that's just the way he operates. So this is a big put up or shut up kind of thing for Le'Veon Bell. And as such, the other running backs, the Melvin Gordons, the Ezekiel Elliott's of the world, are probably going to be looking at this game to see, does Le'Veon play well enough to justify the fact that he held out for a full year and didn't necessarily get the money he was seeking, but got more than he probably is worth at this point in his professional football career and life. That's really going to be the major storyline here is Le'Veon Bell and how the Bills defense adjusts now to him being a virtual unknown right now. It's one thing to play Pittsburgh once a year or whenever Buffalo plays them, but they're now going to be seeing him in theory 2 times a year, every year for the next 4 years. So how the Bills defense is going to tailor to somebody that can catch passes like a receiver out of the backfield for Sam Darnold, someone that does have the elusive running back skills that Bilal Powell and all of them in Jets previous years didn't have. He's the biggest running back marquee running back name since Curtis Martin, and I don't want to say LaDainian Tomlinson for the 2 years that the Jets had LT, because that was at the tail end of LT's career. We had Curtis Martin. We had Curtis Martin through just about the entirety of his career, sans 2 years in New England. They now have to prepare for somebody that potentially has still has the playmaking ability that Le'Veon Bell does. That's going to be the big storyline right here, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And looking at for the Jets, seeing how Adam Gase puts it all together, because he seems like quite an interesting fellow, as we've seen throughout the offseason. And then for the Buffalo Bills, can Josh Allen, as we talked about before, can Josh Allen put it all together? Can he start to make those intermediate throws? Can he? And again, we're talking a full season for one game, but there's a lot of questions. I mean, it's been a long offseason, a lot of changes, a lot of development, a lot of hit pieces, a lot of stories, a lot of everything.
Yeah, and you know what? On another note is, but playing to that, a long offseason thing. Why do some Bills friendly shows, other shows on terrestrial radio and things like that, why are they looking down on Josh Allen? I still don't understand that.
It's very easy to, because he's young and he's still got a lot to learn, and his flaws are quite evident. I mean, we saw,
but it's not like that. It's not like that with Darnold. Like, nobody's looking down at Darnold at all.
It's all about the media.
Same with Mayfield, and same with Lamar Jackson.
It's all about the media. They are ready. They're very quick and easy to trash because it's what they've been used to. And that's, unfortunately, it's the same thing with the Sabres. Why do a lot of people write negative pieces about the Sabres, even though they're doing bad? They're just used to, it's just, they kind of have like an acid trip, an acid flashback, and they're like, oh yeah, the Bills are bad. Oh yeah, the Sabres are bad. Let's just keep doing it. Let's just keep going for it. And
right.
It's kind of how it is. Instead of saying, Josh Allen has trouble throwing the intermediate pass, but hey, he's shown some improvement here. or he's shown some improvement there, it's always, oh yeah, well, Josh Allen had a good preseason showing, but he still did those things that are going to make him struggle to develop. It's like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. But if he's showing improvement, that's good. That's obviously what you want to see. So
right. Now I know that the Jets team that they're going to be facing, particularly on offense, is a radically different offense than perhaps Bills fans or Patriots, Dolphins fans, for that matter, as well in the AFC East. Are going to see, because for the first time since 1995, I believe, the New York Jets have a offensive-minded head coach. And that was very evident with the way that the Jets first team played throughout the preseason. The first 2 games, Darnold drove them down the field very easily and got a touchdown. And they picked up the pace, and there was a few no huddles mixed in there and things like that. So you can tell how different the offense is and how quicker paced, how much more they're relying on the passing game. And that's going to be a different side of the New York Jets that the other teams in the East have not seen in quite some time, dare say at all in this generation of NFL football for them. So the Bills defense is going to have to adjust to a very fast paced, I don't want to say high-powered offense, because it's only Le'Veon Bell, and Robbie Anderson right now is questionable for week 1. He'll probably play, but he's injured a little. I'm not exactly sure what the injury was, but he's questionable for week 1 right now. There's no real dynamic, super playmaking wide receiver. I think they're waiting for Robbie Anderson to see if Robbie Anderson can be that guy, because he's been talking about it. But in the pace is going to be picked up a little bit on offense. The Bills defense needs to be ready for that, because this is not the Jets of yesteryear.
Absolutely. And hey, best part about this whole thing, we're back next week to talk about it.
Hooray! We're back next week to talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. Turn into the Gear Network radio programming here. Trust the podcast every week.
It feels good. It feels good to be back. I mean, it sucks because, football season turns the page to fall to winter, but hey, it's good to be back. It's good to have Trust the Podcast back. It's good to be talking meaningful sports again.
Yes, indeed. And you know what? It's kind of like a bittersweet pill to swallow, because as much as I love summer and the pool weather and all that, and now it's the realization that I got to close the pool and I got to do all that and put all the summer stuff away. I got to switch out my shorts
I got to switch out your shorts for sweatpants, your zip ups for pullovers. You know.
I still wear the flip flops though. I'm still a hippie at heart, but
I still have I still got the Crocs out, man. I don't not wear the Crocs all year. You got one all year round.
But you've got this. You've got meaningful football all around. College football is underway. Notre Dame is playing tonight. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I'm going to be glued to the TV tonight to watch that. And meaningful football, and then hockey season starting soon. I know you're a Sabres guy, and
absolutely.
I'm a fan of a West Coast Canadian team, the Calgary Flames. That's happening. So at the very least, to calm the nerves of losing summer, meaningful sports returns. It's so great. It's a wonderful time. And of course, optimism is at an all-time high at the beginning of every NFL season. It's amazing. And then even after the NFL season, Ryan, the Seattle Dragons, baby, in the XFL. Get pumped, buddy. Get pumped, baby.
That'll be a lot of fun. That'll be a lot of fun. Well, hey, John is at the JC Money. I am at Wolfe BLTD. I've already got my plan set up for next Sunday to go over to my wife's uncle's house. He's got Sam Adams Oktoberfest keg on tap. We're going to get some snacks, some food, some chicken wing dip. I am ready to go.
Have you had Oktoberfest yet, or are you holding on until that point?
I've had Oktoberfest a couple times by now.
Okay, yeah. It's crazy because every time I saw Oktoberfest, it always signified fall to me. But then they released it at the end of July this year.
Dude, I went to a Red Wings game a couple days ago, and they had one of the stands had Oktoberfest on tap, and I'm like, yeah, I don't care, I'm going to get it.
Oh, when we went camping a couple of weeks ago, myself, Brandon, my co-host in the Listen In podcast, Rusty Bucks and Beef, we all went camping to Cayuga Lake a couple of weeks ago, and we had we drank a lot, but we had about 4 12-packs of the High Life, the champagne of beers, and we had probably about 3 12-packs of Oktoberfest. We completely crushed every single one of them. There's a bottle of champagne mixed in there too, because Brandon hit 40. So, we drank a lot, but yeah, I typically wait until September before I start cracking open Oktoberfest. This year I did not. So
Look, at the Oktoberfest time of year is the best time of year in my opinion, and that's all I got to say about that. I got no more. It speaks for itself. But again,
as you say, that's fair.
Absolutely, John. Shut up, John. That's what you say, but I say
no. I say shut up, Ryan.
Thank you.
I don't tell myself to shut up, Ryan.
Well, I've been shutting.
That would be
you,
stupid.
Yeah. Well, anyways,
Jesus Christ.
John's at the JC Money. I am at Wolfe BLTD. This has been another successful Trust the Podcast. We thank Matt Parrino of New York Upstate for joining us. Appreciate you sticking around to hear the Week 1 preview as well. And as always, first off, we will see you back this time, same place next week. But also, as always, this has been Trust the Podcast. Go Bills.
Wait, whoa. You forgot something very important, Ryan.
What did I forget?
You say we're Trust the Podcast. I say you're not.
Well, we could do that, but I was going back to this is Trust the Podcast, Go Bills, but we could do that.
No, Trust the Podcast. We're Trust the Podcast. You're not.
Everybody.
And Go Bills.
Okay, let's try this again. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Let me hold on. Okay, it's like I clicked the thing. This has been another successful Trust the Podcast. As always, we are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
We'll catch you soon. Thank you very much for listening, for tuning in, for sticking around. And as always, Go Bills.
Shut up, Ryan. The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Do you like sports, interactive polls, friendly banter from two guys that probably shouldn't even be on the microphone doing this stuff anyways? Well, if you do, then you're in luck. Us two knuckleheads, Brandon and myself, comprise the Listen In Podcast. That's right, Listen In, the podcast. We're talking sports. We're talking news. We're talking topical things. We're talking all sorts of things, my babies. And you are all invited to listen in right here on the Gear Radio Network.